Hi, welcome to Auction News TV, a channel for property investors interested in property auctions. Today I'll be sharing with you 5 most interesting case studies of properties that I've been involved with in 2016. This will be 2 commercial office to resi conversions, 2 mixed-use deals, and 1 flat refurbishment. And I'm posting weekly video about all the interesting auction strategies, and if you like to receive a notification about each new video, you can click the subscribe button below. I hope you're gonna enjoy the case studies, and here we go, the first one in Peterborough. So this is the first case study. This is a freehold office block that came up in the auction with Acutus, and that was in Peterborough. And that auction was January 2016. So this block, it was vacant and it had planning permission, actually prior approval, to change from office to residential for 24 one-bedroom flats. And after doing some research, we came up with a GDV of this project of approximately 1.8 million, with a build cost and all associated purchase costs of around 900k. So for us, it made sense to proceed with this building at around 550k. And given that the guide price for it was 400k, it made sense. So what happened with this building is it went to the auction, and in the auction, building sold for ridiculous 1.26 million. I have no idea how someone thinks they will make it work, and how long term they're looking, but this certainly was beyond what we thought this is worth. With a GDV of around 1.8 million, there is no profit. In fact, we think there will be a loss with this project. Well, the current vendor, I recently checked out the planning portal, and I see that the vendor have applied for planning for additional 5 units in the roof space. That planning permission was rejected, so it's back to square one, and it would be really interesting to see what's gonna happen with this project and how someone is able to make it work at 1.26 million. And the second case study is actually something that I was involved with a joint venture partner. So this is a property in Camberwell, which we picked up. We did a deal at the auction for 280k for a 2-bedroom flat in Camberwell, and that was a pre-rundown flat, in a very nice block, quite attractive block inside, quite popular in Camberwell. May not look very attractive from this picture, but we picked it up. We exchanged on this flat for 280k in September 2015, and we had a bit of a legal issue with the vendor refusing to comply with the special conditions. And the special conditions said that this building is sold with vacant possession, and it took us 9 months to enforce the vacant possession with the vendor, and also we had to pay another £10,000 added to the purchase price just to settle matters outside of the court and avoid lengthy court battles with this vendor. So in the end, we actually purchased this for £290,000. You can see here, this is how the flat looked in a pretty good condition after we cleared it out. Before we cleared it, it was disgusting. It had cockroaches, and it was full of junk. So we had to clear it out, and we did a refurbishment on this one, and this is how the flat looked after refurbishment. So we sold it just before Christmas for £403,000 to an end user. and this one made a profit of around £50,000 in the space of 7 months from completing on this, but it took us 16 months to get this from exchange to resale. So that was quite a lengthy project, and the lesson from this is to really stick to your guns when it comes to enforcing special conditions. Special conditions is the document in the legal pack that basically overrides all the other conditions in the auction contract, and whatever is said in those special conditions, this is what needs to happen, and it basically it ties up both the seller and the buyer to fulfill those obligations. So this was a nice little refurbishment deal that happened. So this third case study is it was a commercial property in Swanley in Kent. So that one was, you can see on the picture here, that it was 2 commercial units downstairs, 2 retail units downstairs, and then office space above, and the office space had prior approval to be converted from offices into four flats, two bedrooms and 2 1 bedrooms. And the GDV of this project was around £1 million, with a cost to convert and to purchase the property of approximately 250k. So with the guide price, this is actually the guide price of £450,000. So there was quite a bit of room for anyone who wanted to purchase it to go for above the guide price. However, there was a little legal issue that caused certainly us and perhaps other investors as well some uncertainty, which was the access road on the side. You can see there is this access road in here, and that's very important road for accessing the flats that were going to be created on the side. And there was no rights inside of a title of this building to that road whatsoever. So that road was, according to the vendors, it was used for a number of years, for a long time, without any expressed permission. However, there was nothing in writing to say that this road could be used. So if someone would turn out the next day after the auction, say, and blocked the road, there would be no right to enforce it. However, there was some indemnity insurance which wasn't giving us enough of comfort to say that this deal was would stand on its own legs. So, and unsurprisingly, this didn't sell in the auction, and it sold a couple of days after the auction for about 500k. I don't know the exact price, but this is pretty much what we think it sold for. And after it sold, in the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks, I noticed that it was being put into also residential auction. So whoever bought this put it straight into also auction. And the most interesting thing about this is that this person has put it in also auction below the price they have purchased it for. So they purchased it for about 500 and they put it into also auction for 400k. And that is what creates interest in properties, because if someone is putting a property with a very low guide price, that attracts interest. And what that interest created in this example is only 2 weeks later of this property not selling in the Andy Robertson auction, it sold in also residential auction for £615,000, which is 50% more than the guide price of Allsop auction. And obviously the vendor has taken quite a bit of risk, because this property could have sold for, let's say, £475,000, and it would not make him a profit, in fact make him a loss. However, usually it works out. If there is a lot of interest in a property because of a low guide price and a low reserve, there's a lot of competition in the room, and usually properties sell for much more than the reserve price. So the fourth case study is a similar property in Elephant and Castle this time. And I'm sharing this one because I came across this property when I was doing research for another property for a vendor that I'm helping them sell their property in the auction. And this popped up as a comparable. So this property was a shop downstairs. It's got EE signs on it, but it was vacant at the time. And there was upper parts, ancillary accommodation, which had planning permission to be converted into a 2-bedroom flat. And that property was offered with a reserve below £450,000 with Barnet Ross auction in May 2016. And this property had a GDV of approximately 800k. If the shop was rented and the flat converted, the property would be worth around 800k. And what's interesting about this property is that in the room, in the auction, it sold for £800,000, which is another very interesting sale, because I don't know what may be done with this property to increase its price to much higher than 800,000. Perhaps someone could create a roof conversion at another floor and maybe convert this 2-bedroom flat into 2 1-bedroom flats or something like this. However, someone has paid for this 800k. But what's I think that learning from all the properties that I was sharing with you is that the properties that are being offered with a very low reserve price attract a lot of interest, and because of that interest, people get invested in the property. They spend money on surveyors, they spend money on legal costs, and they get emotionally attached to a project. And because they spend so much money, they want to win it in the auction. And when it comes to the auction, they might be paying over the odds because of all the investment and attachment they've got to the project. And you only need 2 people to be bidding for the property for this to be driven up to a very high level. So this is case study number 4. Okay, so this property, you can see it here. I actually helped my client to trade this property in the auction. My client bought this property at approximately £450,000, and she spent about £25,000 in purchase cost to have this property basically purchased. And she put it in the auction at £475,000. So if she sold this at 475, she would just break even. But the reason to put that property at that low price was to attract interest, and it worked really well. This property sold for £560,000 before the auction. It didn't even make it to the auction. It was that popular, and my client took the pre-auction offer that came from a very motivated buyer. So on this one, I will be actually sharing in the next video an interview with my client. My client Fee Warren Smith, she's an investor in that area, and she now loves auctions. And I'll be sharing an in-depth interview with her in the next episode of Auction News TV.